The Pentagon, meanwhile, reportedly asking the White House to approve up to $200 billion in an Iran defense supplemental package. I've been reporting it's at least $50 billion. Now we understand from a report it could be $200 billion. Joining me now is Kentucky Senator Roger Marshall, a member of the Senate Budget and Finance Committees. Senator, good to see you. I know you've got a lot of balls in the air looking at your budget and your work on the budget. What do you make of $200 billion in a defense supplemental? What would you be poised to support?
Well, Maria, I think they do need to come to D.C. and tell to Capitol Hill and tell us what that money is going to be spent on. I think, I think we give the Pentagon $1 trillion a year. You would think that would be enough, but we're going to have to do something. That sounds like a little bit high number to me. $200 billion sounds a little tall. Yeah,
I would imagine so. What is your sense of the president's plans for $1.5 trillion defense budget in 2027 and the idea that, we've got so much going on right now. Would you support a reconciliation plan if it came out of the House before the midterms?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
would support
put stuff like that in there?
So I would absolutely support a reconciliation plan. Right. I think that we need to be focused on the cost of living. We have great legislation to drive down the cost of health care. Our price tags bill would be one example where we force every health care provider in the country to show you how much something costs as well. The $1.5 trillion, the president often is negotiating. I know that's fine. It's hard to believe he's negotiating with that number. I think we really need to press the Pentagon to become more efficient. I bet there's 25–50% waste in the Pentagon right now, where 3 or 4 companies control 90% of that industry. So I think there's opportunities for the Pentagon to become more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know that nobody knows more about the healthcare situation than you. So in terms of allocating the capital properly and getting costs down, you are right there in step with President Trump's efforts in terms of ensuring that Americans see lower costs. But we're also worried about the cost of things like fertilizer, right? I mean, the conflict in Iran has U.S. farmers worried about the cost and the availability of fertilizer. Farmers are expecting to pay $100,000 more for fertilizer this season. It is right now in the beginning or the middle of the spring growing season, and prices are going to be up 40% from last year. Senator, you're a member of the Senate Agricultural Committee. What can you do about it? I'll be speaking with both Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Interior Secretary Doug Burgum about it in the next hour. But give us your assessment here.
Right. Well, you certainly are right that input costs are a significant challenge to American farmers right now. They went up 50% under Joe Biden. There's a hiccup. Yeah, fertilizer prices very much dependent upon the cost of natural gas. So the good news is in America right now that natural gas has only went up about 10%, as opposed to in Europe it's went up 50%. Why? Because of drill, baby, drill. So we're very fortunate that it's not going to be as reflective as it is overseas. A lot of the fertilizers come through, the Ukraine situation and the sea over there as well. So solving the Ukraine issue would probably have a bigger impact on fertilizer than anything else. But let me just say some good news out here is that we're expecting corn exports and ethanol exports to be up some 25% this year, thanks to President Trump's trade agreements that he's made as well. So there's good news out there. The 45Z is coming online. That means we're going to turn more corn into ethanol, biofuels, into jet fuels as well. Lots of good news, but you're right. We've got to work on the input prices. And I expect Secretary Rawlins to have a major announcement sometime in the next month, a description of things we've been working on to lower the cost of fertilizers.
That's very good. All right. In the middle of all of this, you're trying to save America with the Save America Act. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says Republicans are going to target Democrats in the upcoming midterms if they don't get on board with this Save America Act. The bill being debated on the Senate floor, expected to stretch into next week, Senator. I spoke with your colleague, Dave McCormick, on Sunday about this, and here's what he said. Watch.
You're looking at a guy who lost his first race by 900 votes, won his second by 15,000 of 7 million. Every vote has to be legitimate and count. And just last week, there was a guy, Mahadi Sacco, in Pennsylvania who was arrested. He was supposed to be deported in 2000. He's been in the country for 26 years illegally, and he was charged with voting 5 times in national elections. Yeah. So this is a thing. This is a real issue, and that's why I'm going to be a strong supporter.
So, Senator, where are we on this? Do you believe that this will actually ever get to the president's desk?
You know, I hope so in some form. And the real question is, why won't 10 Democrats come across the aisle and vote to support voter ID of some sort? I think to Senator McCormick's point here, and by the way, he's doing an incredible job, a freshman senator. He's doing a great job for the state of Pennsylvania as well right now. So very proud of him and his efforts as well. Look, we have 50 million non-citizens living in this country right now, and that's why people are concerned about making their vote count.
Well, the problem is many of those people got driver's licenses. So if you have a driver's license and you're illegal in the country, is that going to be enough to have ID to vote, or is it something else? You got to have proof of citizenship, right?
Yeah, start with proof of citizenship to register, and then a proof, and then an ID when you vote as well. And same thing when you're doing mail-in ballots. You need some type of real ID for that as well. Trust, but verify.
Senator, thank you. Good to see you, sir. Roger Marshall joining us. We'll see you soon. We'll be right back.